Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Big bad wolf, big bad wolf. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?
But influence is largely a matter of patience, I have found. Once I had served the sorcerer's purpose, he threw me out of his house to die. I resolved to live, to spite him. I begged. I sold what parts of my body remained to me. I became an excellent thief, and soon learned that the contents of a man's letters are more valuable than the contents of his purse. Step by step, one distasteful task after another, I made my way from the slums of Myr to the small council chamber. Influence grows like a weed. I tended mine patiently until its tendrils reached from the Red Keep all the way across to the far side of the world, where I managed to wrap them around something very special.
Sorcerer.
Hello, my old friend. It's been a long time. I have no doubt the revenge you want will be yours in time. If you have the stomach for it.
Hey guys, how you doing? It's Moejii, the King of the North, and welcome to my channel. I'm here to do a little tinfoilery on my main man, Varys. The little fairy from the narrow sea. I mean, this guy is just, he's a plum guy. He's a plum fairy. He's a little maneuver. He's a shaker. He's a manipulator. He is the spider. I'd like to break down a few things and figure out what Varys' backstory is, what he's about. Are the backstories real? Are they lies? Are they the truth? We'll see. I've got a little tinfoilery theories to determine if Varys is a woman. Yes, you heard it, folks. Is Varys a woman? Now, I'm not the first one to come up with this or think about it. It's just plain to see the way he acts, the way he does, the way he moves, the way he shakes. So, welcome to my channel, welcome to my video, and I hope you enjoy my tomfoolery. Alright, let's first break down and talk about the first bits of knowledge that we know about Varys, his backstory. Let's start from the beginning. Varys was born across and far the narrow sea in Lees. He was born a slave, and as a child he traveled with a troop of actors all around the different free cities. One day in Myr, a certain man made his master an offer too tempting to refuse. Varys is quoted as saying he feared the man meant to use him, as it's known some men used small boys. But what the sorcerer wanted was far worse. He gave Varys a potion that made him powerless to move or speak, yet did nothing to dull his senses. With a hooked blade, he sliced them root and stem, chanting all the while. He burned his parts in a brazier, and the flames turned blue, and when it stopped, he heard a voice call back to his master sorcerer. Okay, so let's just look at this, alright? He was a slave, he was an orphan, call him whatever you want to call him. He could have been a sex slave, a bed slave, he could have been thrown into the Unsullied, God knows what, but he somehow managed to be in a troupe of mummers actors, okay? Back in the days, actors' troupes were the only way people would get news and information. You could say that even faceless men would like to be in a position as this because you get to see the people, the lower class, and give them as much information that you've heard throughout the day. It's sort of like the news broadcast of the modern time. So Varys chose to be in this specific profession, being able to spread news far and away. Alright, before we get to the conspiracy theories, next up in his backstory is being taken by what we would call a sorcerer. Was he a red priest? Who knows? But this particular individual decided to cut Varys, supposedly, and use the body parts to make some sort of conjurer's trick. Was it a blood sacrifice? Who the hell knows? To me, this seems like a blood sacrifice. This particular sorcerer used that blood sacrifice to then get called back from beyond the grave. Is Varys king? Does he have king's blood? Is that why the sorcerer picked him? Who knows? But this is a theory that a lot of people believe, and why the sorcerer chose Varys out of any child he could have chose. We don't know Varys' exact age, but I'm guessing it was probably around the age of Gendry, maybe younger, when Melisandre took Gendry or Edric Storm and tried to use him as a blood sacrifice. Is this the particular ripe age for using blood sacrifices? Is the king's blood particularly potent from the ages of 8 to 15 years old, right when a boy turns puberty? Who knows? It is said that the day the sorcerer threw Varys out of his residence and was done burning his man parts in the brazier, Varys asked the wizard what shall he do next, in which the wizard replied, die. Out of spite, Varys decided from that day henceforth that he would decide to live. He decided to sell whatever body parts he had to gain any money to move around through the city, and he stole what he could. After a while, he became one of the best thieves in the city. He became so rich, he took in orphan boys and taught them the tricks of the trade. He became their master of sorts. Him and his little birds became so good at thievery that the other thieves in the city decided to gang up on him. This is where the next part of our story takes a turn. When the city became too hot to handle for Varys, he sought the help of a sellsword named Illyrio Mopatis. They formed a formidable duo and became a tag team. Varys was the brains and Illyrio the muscle of the operation. They would thieve and thieve and thieve throughout the city and sell back the items to the rich and the famous. They would steal as much as they could from the wealthier Pentos and sell it back to them. For a time, they ruled the city's underground. Varys called his guild of boys his little birds and used them for his new learned trade, that the secrets of a man's purse were much more valuable than the gold in his pocket. He became so famous that King Aerys, also named the Mad King, heard of his exploits in Westeros. He sent a letter to Varys and asked him to join him on the small council in King's Landing. This was the moment that Varys had been waiting for his whole life, from the gutters in a sewer rat up to the small council of King's Landing. Did he have Targaryen roots that pulled him there as well? We'll never know. So starts the most important chapter of Varys' life, becoming the Master of Whispers for Mad King Aerys. Now what I want you to do is I want you to think. If you were a woman, possibly from a long-lost dynasty of royals, and you wanted to get back into the good graces of that family without really revealing your identity, what would you do? You'd have to come up with a good backstory and have a damn good disguise. How would you cover up your female genitalia without it being too obvious? In a world full of eunuchs, unsullied, and etc., there's many ways to do this, and having the experience of being in a mummer's troupe gives you the ability to disguise yourself at the blink of an eye. I want you to think back to Varys' first 2 seasons, and you could even say leading up to the most current season. Look at Varys as if he were a woman. If you look at the scenes between him and Oberyn Martell, or all the scenes with Littlefinger, a lot of things start making sense. In the books, you can imagine if Varys was a woman as well, but for the sake of argument, since we get the visuals of a television show, just use the visuals of Varys in the first 2 seasons. Imagine if he were a woman. Look at the dialogue and look at his mannerisms.
Why? Nothing dangerous down there.
Varys is more cleanly than most. In a world where we barely even see men taking showers and women wearing lilacs and silks, he's one of the most groomed men in Westeros. One of the best groomed men in King's Landing. His nails, everything from his hair to his bottoms are preen, cleaned, and waxed. He has powder in his face. He wears lotions and is said to smell like lilacs. This is very interesting if you pay attention to details.
Tasteful task
When I mean showering, I mean bathing. Obviously, they have facilities for men to dress and clean themselves, but Varys is very unique.
grows.
We learn that he shaves his head for no other apparent reason other than it's another part of his disguises. The assumption is he shaves his head so not to show the Targaryen silver hair. But let's get back to the cover story for a second. So if you were a woman, possibly considered transgender, and needed a good cover story to slip into King's Landing, you need to come up with something clever, something that no one would ever dare to do and check up on. When it comes to your female body parts, you'd have to do a very good story, and what better way than to say you were cut, and cut by a sorcerer, so as to put some evil voodoo into the story. No one wants to mess with evil voodoo. If someone were to ever touch you down there, as we just saw in the clip with Roz and Littlefinger's brothel, they would just feel nothing. There'd be no questions, and they'd immediately stop thinking about it because they know the voodoo backstory on you. When people talk about Varys, they get the shills and creeps. He gives them the willy-nillys. Anybody who doesn't know him calls him Lord Varys because they're afraid of him. He's built this reputation on knowing everybody's information to use it against them. The spider. And this backstory on becoming a eunuch is the most cleverest thing he's done to make himself presentable to the people. So what we know is when you're afraid of somebody and worried about what they can do to you, the last thing you're going to do is question his origin story. And best believe Varys has got one of the best origin stories in the business. He often puts on a public persona, Varys does, of being nothing more than a pudgy, portly, well-suited man living in the pleasantries of court life, humble, fawning, and a little effeminate. To anyone but a fool, you can see this is a simple facade that Varys has developed, which often leads to those who do not know him well enough to underestimate him as cheerful and a vapid flatterer. In reality, he is cunning and a ruthless manipulator of court politics, on par with Master of Coin Peter Littlefinger Baelish. On par, both of them on par with each other. They are two sides of a coin, ladies and gentlemen. With whom he frequently spars is Littlefinger with Varys. Unlike Baelish, Varys insists that his goals are to achieve what he honestly feels is best for the realm. If you think of Littlefinger as Varys, almost sexual frustration, as somebody that he looks upon as a rival, you can see everything that points to him being a woman, period. The way Littlefinger and Varys speak to each other, it's almost like two old married couple sparring and reeling with each other after many years of marriage. Alright, let's go back to Varys' physical appearance for a second, ladies and gentlemen. What we are expected to see when looking at the spider. Confronted with Varys' abnormally large size, they think fat man. And when they see no obvious external sexual bulge, they think eunuch. He has soft white hands. He powders his face and he's said to always smile and smell of lilacs. He prefers comfortable silken clothing, fine silks and woven tapestries, velvets, the richest damask, and soft slippers that allow him to walk without making a sound. His outward manner is ubiquitous, mysterious, and squeamish. He is a master of disguise and can easily change his appearance, gait, smell, and costume to become almost unrecognizable. One of the disguises that he preferably uses in the Red Keep is that of the Gaoler, the jailer who takes care of the prisoners down in the dungeons of the Red Keep. We are first introduced to this disguise of Varys when Cersei sent Eddard Stark down into the dungeons of the Red Keep for finding out her secret twincest. Varys goes down and meticulously uses this disguise to pass messages and secrets to Eddard and give him information. He also tries to convince Eddard to go to the Wall and become a member of the Night's Watch. He is secretly given this option by Varys to take the Black if he were to confess that everything that he admitted about the Twincest was false. Moving on from Varys' disguises, let's get back to his maneuvers and shaking. Varys cleverly lets people think of what he looks like and what he is. He clearly has no sexual interest in human females, but perhaps he has another interest. He did lick his lips when asked about the question of females a time before. Also, him and Illyrio are stated as both men that appear to be light on their feet. Nobody in A Song of Ice and Fire is attracted to Varys. On the contrary, they loathe him, and some are afraid of him. How perfect for anyone wanting to cover their tracks because of their suspicious looks or not wanting their suspicious backstory to ever come to light. If people are afraid of you, they won't dig into your life. And if they do, you can kill them before they know any better because you are the master of whisperers. You almost know what people are thinking before they even say it. Oberyn Martell once asked him in the throne room of King's Landing about his sexual interests. He said, "Women?" Varys shook his head. "Men, then?" Varys shook his head. And when Varys said no to both, Oberyn immediately thought small boys, in which Varys shook his head again. And Oberyn said, "What then?" This is when Varys then gazed upon the Iron Throne, and Oberyn finally knew. There are only a few things that everyone in A Song of Ice and Fire can be sure of. Varys is fat, bald, and a eunuch. Anything else that go towards his ambitions are a mystery. And back to the weird eunuch's description. We are told several times throughout the books and story that Varys has a peculiar smile. A slimy smile, you could say. I interpret this to mean that Varys probably doesn't show his teeth when smiling. And that could be that there is something odd about his teeth. Could they be something that could lean towards female traits? I don't know if there are female traits when it comes to teeth, but there could be something peculiar there. Varys can make himself sound and look like anything. He was trained as a mummer's actor. Whether it was a jailer in the Red Keep or a eunuch in the Small Council, he has the ability to transform himself. You would almost think that him a faceless man, but that's a theory for another day. Maybe even a Merlin king. And again, that's a theory for another day. And when I say that he can transform himself to not look like a woman, this is one of the easiest things in the book. Pay attention to when people in A Song of Ice talk about poison. They are said to only be used by women, cravens, and eunuchs. And that is battered home time and time again. When Jon Arryn was poisoned, it was talked about between Grandmaster Pycelle and Eddard Stark. When Oberyn Martell and the Mountain fought, and the poison sipped into the mountain, it was brought up again. Constantly, poisons are always referred to as being used by women, cravens, and eunuchs. And we only know a few eunuchs in this story. Varys, the Unsullied, and some of the priests off across in the Narrow Sea. Back to the relationship of Varys and Illyrio. These old comrades have been trading war stories for years, but they've been separated for a while, since Varys went to King's Landing to serve as the Master of Whispers. Illyrio is claimed to have had a wife with features resembling that of old Valyrians, which was purple eyes and silver hair, like their Targaryen relatives. What if Varys is one of the female descendants of the Blackfyre line and had fallen in love with Illyrio and had a child? So playing the part of loving mother and spider, weaving an intricate web for years, trying to get her son Aegon on the throne. This could explain why Varys shaves his hair, both to hide that he is a Blackfyre and a woman. Though why would Varys bother disguising herself as a man? We must remember that unless a woman was high-born, the chance of them doing anything important was slim in this world of men. Varys did not want to end up a whore or a serving girl, so he disguised himself as a man in order to attempt to gain power. Illyrio's wife was named Sarah V, V for Valyrian. This is Varys' name spelled backwards. The one problem with him being Sarah, however, is that it is said Illyrio kept the hands of his dead wife to remember her by. Could that be a clever ruse as well? Who knows? I'm not shipping Varys as Illyrio's dead wife yet, only that he is a she. Let me tell you a story about the Hijras. It's a term used in Southeast Asia, and particularly in India, to refer to trans women or transgenders. In Pakistan and Bangladesh, the Hijras are officially recognized as a third gender by the government, being neither completely male or female. In India, also transgender people have been given the status of a third gender and are protected as per the law despite the social ostracism. Hijras have a recorded history in the Indian subcontinent from antiquity onwards, as suggested by the Kama Sutra period. This history features a number of well-known roles within the subcontinental cultures, part gender liminal, part spiritual, and part survival. In South Asia, many Hijras live in well-defined and organized al-Hijra communities, led by a guru. These communities have sustained themselves over generations by adopting young boys, who are rejected by or flee their families of origin. Many work as sex workers for their survival. Could this been the inspiration of Varys by George R. R. Martin? We don't know, but it is possible. And while we're on the subject of the boys, let's talk about Varys' little birds. It's an interesting situation. Varys is almost like a mother figure to these little boys. He takes the orphaned children from the slums and teaches them the tricks of the trade, having them hiding all throughout King's Landing and the Red Keep inside the walls, listening to the secrets of men, then passing it back along to him as the spider would to flies in a honeysuckle slot. Now you try to think, what kind of a man, a grown man, would take so much interest in orphan boys in a time where life and death is meaningless for the rich and famous and the poor below. But on to more pressing matters, Varys' descriptions are what intrigue me the most. When around Tyrion and King's Landing in the first 3 books, it is said that Varys likes to giggle and prance. He slithers behind corners, listening to every word he can hear. What kind of a man has secrets as his main weapon of charge? Not a sword, not a bow, but secrets. This is something interwoven in a female personality. It may not be obvious, it may be peculiar, but you've got to admit, secrets are not the weapon of choice for any man in this world we watch. Varys the Spider, King's Landing's Master of Whisperers, is an enigmatic character and a major player in the Game of Thrones. His loyalty is as questionable as it is complicated. He is one of the only characters who professes to have the good of the general population rather than the entitlement of personal gain or an individual sense of honor at heart. Varys' commitment to the realm is one possible explanation for his fence-straddling loyalties and constant betrayals. But some readers speculate that Varys has more stake in the War of the Five Kings than he lets on. Next chapter in my story, I will do a part 2 on Varys, and if he is a woman, or is he the Merlin King? Stay tuned to find out. So guys, please like, please share, and please stay tuned. It's the King of the North. I'm out.